In May last year, during the height of the layoff season, I made a video where I talked about the severe mismanagement that's been going on in the games industry. From the disregard for basic economic principles such as balanced growth rate and initial inability to effectively transform the processes for remote work during the surprising glory days of gaming in light of COVID-19 lockdowns, all the way to the reckless trend chasing and the all too eager live service push. From the problematic nature of subscription models such as Game Pass to the seemingly erratic and aimless scrambling of Microsoft in their post-70 billion acquisition days, I've covered it all. If you haven't seen that, no worries, no one did, it's actually by far the worst performing video on the channel. For now, think of it as a companion piece, a prequel that you can get to later if you wish so. But now, over a year later, that we have more pieces of the puzzle, most notably the answer to the question what the fuck is Microsoft doing, and of course some neat figures we can look at to pretend this is a somewhat informed take that I'm presenting, it's high time we beat this dead horse, once more, with feeling. This is an Xbox? Shit, no, I meant, you know what, never mind. Gaming industry is struggling. Kind of, because although the total yearly revenue rises, whatever, I'll explain in due time. For now, the key takeaway is that it is indeed struggling, and that it is your fault. Yes, yours in particular, dear viewer. Well, maybe not really, okay, let's start from the beginning. In that prequel you haven't watched, I was panning the executives for their frankly idiotic moves we've had the displeasure of witnessing lately, and honestly I think everything I said there is still pretty spot on. But the more I thought about the big picture, the more obvious it became that it is an incomplete view. Here's the sitch, the market is growing, and all the forecasts are predicting that this will continue in the following years. Of course, forecasts can be wrong, but honestly there's no good reason to think otherwise right now. It's not growing by the insane margins greedy shareholders hoped for in light of the COVID boom back in 2020, but nobody sane would think that. Oh wait, what? Someone did? That's someone being foolish execs that overextended their companies, and then in 2022, and for the first time in a long while, we've seen a year-on-year decline in revenue because, surprise, surprise, when people can leave their houses, they have less time for gaming, which in turn kickstarted 2 years of mass layoffs, and you know what, fuck that, I've been talking about this in May, no reason to get upset again. Plus there are two sides to every equation, and I think it's the right time to finally take a peek at the other one, the consumers. So we know that the money pie is growing, but that doesn't mean much. It's more interesting to look at how it's distributed, see who gets a huge chunk and who's only trying to secure some crumbs not to die from starvation. The sad reality is that the market gets more stratified every year. It's the forever game that's the talk of the town, been that way for a while. An ever-evolving experience, preferably one that allows user-generated content, one that fully consumes lives of those who play it, so they don't even think about playing anything else because, God forbid, losing engagement and therefore money. That's why when you check the revenue for whichever quarter of 2024, you'll always find Fortnite in there. That's why Roblox boasts monthly active users in the hundreds of millions. That's why when you look at player counts at SteamDB, you'll always see Counter-Strike, Dota, League of Legends, GTA 5 and PUBG firmly in the top 10. These are all ancient games when you look at their release dates, yet they have occupied the top spots in these charts and people's minds and wallets for years. They're infinite money machines, something that makes every publisher in the world hard just thinking about it. It's why everyone and their grandma wanted their own live service hit, but as demonstrated by sad fates of games like Concord, X-Defiant, Suicide Squad or Foam Stars, this is an almost impenetrable market. A handful of games get all the pie and the rest of them fight to death for what little remains. Look to the east though, traveler, there's a new dawn on the horizon. A shiny golden cow glowing in the distance, and is even worse than what we've had thus far. For years now it's been the, by the way, just a stratified mobile market that brought in by far the most revenue. It's logical, mobile games barely have any entry costs, you can play them on the go and it doesn't matter whether you're 6 or 60. It's here where the monetization reaches truly immoral dimensions. There's a simple psychology behind how people spend their money, and frankly it's impossible to put it better than Terry Pratchett. It's easier to unknowingly spend $2,000 a year through microtransactions than paying half that for a console with some games as a one-time purchase, so it shouldn't surprise you that it's precisely here on the mobile warfront where the gacha games boom started. And it's spreading like a wildfire. Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero, AFK Journey, they rake in tens of millions of dollars per month each. Just recently we've seen Infinity Nikki hit 20 million downloads in its first week. For comparison, when we look at the more traditional AAA offerings from the East, Death Stranding hit 19 million last November, 5 years after its PS4 launch. And that includes players who played via Game Pass or got the game free on Epic. Capcom has announced their 2023 RE4 remake sold 9 million copies, making it the fastest selling RE game in history. Meanwhile, the pink anime lady probably doesn't even know numbers that small exist. With figures like that, it's a matter of time for the Western developers to catch on and hop on the gacha train coming from Asia themselves, or they'll at least try. So there you have it, folks, it's your fault. Just the way it's my fault, because as a whole we consumers vote with our time and our wallets, so when in the grand scheme of things we have shit taste, we really shouldn't object when we're served shit. The masses have spoken after all. And to prevent any misunderstanding, I'm not here shouting at the clouds with rose-tinted glasses about how games were better 20 years ago when I was a kid and it took next to nothing to impress me like some do. And I'm most definitely not out there with the little racist and sexist pricks spouting delirious nonsense about the culture war and some DEI conspiracy that's killing the industry. There absolutely is a market with incredible games for everyone to discover and super talented developers working their asses off to create unforgettable experiences. Most people just aren't engaging with them. The entire world has been playing the same few games for the past 5 years, so what I'm saying is branch out, seek out new experiences, discover new games, AAA, AA, indies, whatever catches your eye. Don't settle for the fast food games, shop local. In 2024, the industry has faced yet another tough year with almost 15,000 jobs lost, and 2025 isn't shaping up much better. There's a brain drain going on. The least we can do is not to use our money to fund predatory games that in turn stifle the diversity of games that get made. Keep in mind that it's not the developers who have the money to fund their game-making endeavors, it's the publishers. And as in any business, they invest that money where it can be recouped with the least amount of risk. Okay, another thing I want to touch upon, and I don't really have a good segue to steer to it more organically, so we'll just pretend I did. We finally know what Microsoft's gaming division was doing all this time. It turns out everything is an Xbox now. And they also had a highly compelling reason why they had to let go those few thousand people. There was just no other way, really. I mean, how else could you approve a 60 billion share buyback program and increase dividends? Anyway, the This is an Xbox campaign stirred up some emotions, especially the negative ones, but I think it's fundamentally misunderstood by the general public, so I want to address that too before I wrap up. Let's take a look at the Christmas marketing campaign of both Sony and Microsoft. Now, I wonder what your read is on this thing, but the general consensus seemed to be that PlayStation is marketing their product while Xbox is making fools out of themselves. And I couldn't disagree more with such sentiment. PlayStation's campaign to me is wishful thinking, purposefully ignoring that the traditional console model no longer resonates with the younger audience that's by all accounts shaping up to be more hardware agnostic and mobile heavy. Basically, it's Sony trying to make the parents think their kids would have a good time with PlayStation. Xbox, on the other hand, is warming the public up to a vision, not of a box that plays your favorite games, but of a future with no need for it. This, I think, is a winning strategy, natural evolution, an endgame of sorts. Whether they actually manage to pull it off is another story. The success here, I think, depends on two key realities. First, they need to cooperate closely with the Windows branch, because this vision can only exist and thrive when there's an OS that doesn't suck balls like Windows 11 currently does. In a future where Xbox means playing or streaming games anywhere, including handhelds, you need operating system that doesn't use 8GB of RAM just idling, that doesn't come up with forced bloatware, that handles updates more conveniently, that respects the user and his input, and comes with functional basic features such as search bar. Microsoft currently offers no such thing, and whether they ever will is a big question. Secondly, it's up to Game Pass and its well-being, and for that you have to provide a library of games that people want to play, which means you have to nurture the myriad of studios you acquired in your quest for corporate hegemony. Are they capable of that? Well, time will tell. If you asked me in May last year around the shattering of Tango and Arcane, I'd be very skeptical. Then early this year with Indie and the new Call of Duty doing numbers, the grass sure seemed greener, although now with the recent own goals handling the initiative or Romero games and increasing Xbox prices yet again, I doubt even a crystal ball could provide a definitive answer. If they succeed, I'll be kinda bummed out, because then gaming's monopolization under Microsoft will be cemented, and that's never a good thing, especially when said company also likes to do business that directly enables carrying out the genocide. If they don't, well, that sucks as well, because we might be witnesses to a purge that will have many a beloved studio find themselves in an existential struggle. Speaking of massive corporate entities with myriad of studios and sought-after IPs in their clutches doing questionable stuff, there's one particular news piece that I've read about with a hint of sorrow and just overall disillusionment recently. EA. Yeah, I know we all love to make fun of Electronic Arts, and to be fair, you don't become the first company in history to win Worst Company in America 2 years in a row for no reason, but as improbable as it sounds, it can be worse. Because EA is going private. A thing that normally wouldn't sound all that bad, after all being publicly traded also has its problems. However, in this case, the 55 billion acquisition really leaves a bitter taste in mouth, because the buyers are none other than Saudi-owned PIF. I guess the Saudis are trying their best to diversify their investments before the oil money inevitably runs dry, as also demonstrated by the acquisition of RTS, a talent agency that organizes the legendary EVO fighting games tournament not long ago. A purchase that understandably left a big portion of the community that historically always viewed itself as somewhat underground and rebellious in low spirits. Too bad the red flags of the EA deal barely start with the blood money from a state that doesn't shy away from exploiting workers almost to a degree of slavery, treats women like second-rate citizens, is openly hostile towards LGBTQ community, and exhibits general aversion towards basic human rights. Unfortunately, they're also joined by an investment firm, owned by none other than Donald Trump's ex-advisor Jared Kushner, and to top it all off, the deal basically involves EA going into 20 billion debt to buy EA, where the leverage to the creditors is, you guessed it, EA itself. Nothing is impossible in the world of finance. What exactly does this mean for EA's future then? Well, what's certain is an imminent lack of transparency now that there are no shareholders to hold the management responsible. Furthermore, my prediction is that in the short term we'll be seeing a lot of redundancies and studio closures, with perhaps EA's infamous monetization getting even more beefed up as a means to recoup money. 20 billion debts don't really pay themselves, you know. Long term though is where the real quote-unquote fun begins, because I reckon we'll be seeing the deranged policy of MAGA and the Saudis trickle into the eventual output. EA with its many popular long-running IPs can be a strong propaganda tool, and after all it definitely wouldn't be the first time we see gamers with all their misguided ire used as a convenient way to start harassment campaigns with serious ramifications for wider socio-political landscape. One final thought for today. I've been talking about the gaming industry like a well-defined term, implying a degree of cohesion, a monolith with precise dimensions, something so rudimentary that I automatically assume each of you watching are familiar with on a base level. But that's a false assumption for a multitude of reasons. The gaming landscape is not one of beautiful cultivated fields where the eye can see, it's no beehive where everyone knows both their role and everyone else's. It's a murky swamp, a multi-story building where there's a grocery shop at the street level, a host of apartments for the middle class above it, an ostentatious loft with a massive terrace on the roof, and a drug trafficking cartel dwelling in the basement. What we refer to as gaming industry is just a thin slice of the business, focused solely on the global north. It's a skewed and predominantly US-centric look that omits way too many variables. Despite the ever-growing internationalism and worldwide trade, we're all reading the same, mostly US-based gaming outlets, following developers from North America, Europe or Japan, visiting conferences made by and for the people of Global North. Where I'm from, in Eastern Europe, growing up in the Northeast, there was a rift between what was going on in the West and here. An entire subculture emerged hidden from the spotlight of Western media. There was a prominent demo scene and a lot of modding going on and of course rampant piracy. While the West was playing Halo on Xbox, down here was a bastion of second-hand PCs with cracked windows. Times have changed a lot since then. Once we joined the EU, we started playing catch-up and soon got assimilated. We're part of the cool kids club now, though a small stigma still remains. But countries of the global south are still in their own little universes, whilst we in our cozy western bubble sort of forgot that we're not representing the entire world. Sometimes a shard of information pierces inside it, like when Black Myth Wukong broke all the records for single-player games sales, and we collectively realized that there's a little something called the Chinese market with 1 billion potential customers. But this extends far beyond China. Do we know how's the gaming scene in India or Southeast Asia, in Latin America or Africa? Do we even care, or did we in our pride forget that the industry extends beyond the folks who come to network at GDC and the games that are unveiled at Jeff's E3 substitutes? Don't look at me, I'm not here to provide answers, I'm not sure there even are any conclusive ones. Perhaps it's enough to just prompt some introspection and reiterate my point about branching out. And not just with your consumer choice, not just related to gaming, but in how you think about the world as it is.